breath is literally the director of everything, of your state, of your awareness of each moment. And
In your
so
nervous system.
your nervous system,
Yeah.
and it's also at the same time the one thing that's controlled by the autonomic nervous system, where we can do it consciously or unconsciously, right? It's something that keeps us alive when we sleep, right? Now, majority of us in the world, we are chronic overbreathers. We are mouth breathers, which, by the way, if you can take away one thing from today, start with nasal breathing.
Are you going through life blind? This is Eyes Wide Open with Nick Thompson. On this podcast, we share knowledge and stories that build human connection while elevating stigmatized societal issues such as mental health, holistic wellness, culture, free speech, and more, all to ensure we show up in the world with our eyes wide open. Okay. All right, here we go. Our guest today is Pavel, aka NOA AON. NOA is a DJ, entrepreneur, and certified ambassador of peace. He's done 15 years of traveling the world, learning about different cultures and ancient teachings. And his mission is to unify the whole world one person at a time through ancient and modern tools for happiness, health, and harmony. I'm so glad to have you here today. Thank you for coming on, Pavel. How are you today?
Thank you. I am beyond grateful to be here. And thank you for opening this up to the world for all that you're doing. And
Thank you.
we're in a pivotal moment on this earth that we live in. So it's exciting to have that chat.
I completely agree. So when you say that, that's actually let's start there for a second. When you say we're at a pivotal moment, I agree, and I'm got a million reasons that I think we're at a pivotal moment. But I'm curious, just what's your view on this pivotal moment? Like, where are we at as a society and a culture?
Well, I think in the simplest terms, it's consciousness expansion. If you look back into, not even 100 years ago or 80 years ago when the World War II ended, like imagine that people used to do that. Like they literally, well, they still do that, but on a global level, like how could we ever, get it this far, right? And today, I feel like if something like this ever was coming to our home or in any Western countries, I truly believe and I hope that people will wake up to a realization that war doesn't do anything but more fear, right? The action of fear is to claim more fear. So I think where we are as a civilization, we are starting to release this massive fear, these ingrained societal norms, these ways of life. Because if you look even just 5 years ago, before COVID, people didn't take care of themselves as they are today. And you can look at the longevity market. You can look at the biohacking market, the IV clinics. IV clinics are now everywhere. That was not a thing even just 5 years
I really
ago.
want to try one.
Yeah. So imagine though, like we are waking up, right? And I think a lot of people say like wake up and there's this like maybe spiritual mindset of this, but really it's happening in everyday life. Like we're saying no to fear. We're saying no to we're saying yes to boundaries. We're starting to realize the scope of who we are. We're not giving power out to the external like we used to. So it's exciting, but also, I call this involution, not an evolution, but involution, which means evolution of your soul.
Oh, I love that. And it's funny because over the last probably year and a half, I've really been like looking inside, listening to the universe, like taking the signs. I've been good at boundaries for a little while, but I've been kind of getting better at them and just really trying to ask myself, like, does this suit me? How does this suit me? Will this continue to suit me? And I developed this whole like mindset of I'm okay shedding anything that doesn't suit me. And that's people, that's places, that's jobs, that's locations, that's anything like that. So I do find it interesting that you say that. And I feel like I've kind of been doing that and experiencing that myself.
Well, I'll tell you another thing. I mean, we're no different from one another. Just because we look different, right? We're so much more alike with another humans than we realize. And I mean, the quantum physics even show that we are one, right? Like at the essence, if we go back to atoms and molecules, as well as if we close our eyes right? The only thing that separates us is air, and or space. And so if we start thinking from this other realms of how does each and every choice impact the others that are,
Hmm.
of the consequences based on the choice, we start realizing that, maybe we shouldn't think a certain way, right? Maybe we should start thinking, differently about ideas. And that's really what it sums up. I think people are starting to realize that they have their own choices, and
Hmm.
choices follow consequences, or consequences follow your choices. And so we have been taught, about law of attraction and all of this. And it's really is the simplest sum is what you think, what you do, what you say is what you're becoming in every moment of your life.
Oh my gosh, that's so well said. I that is so well said. I could not agree more. And you know, what's interesting is I think people were very reactive, and sometimes people just don't think about like what comes next. And my whole mindset is like, and then what? So if I do this or I say this, and then what? And trying to anticipate what could come next, and not in like a anxious way, but more so like, what are the consequences to me saying or doing this thing that I want to say or do? And am I willing to take those consequences, especially if it's something that's maybe a little controversial, which I'm known to have some controversial opinions and thoughts on stuff. So very interesting, very interesting. I got to ask you this, which, I told you beforehand, I ask all my guests, like, what did they want to be when they were growing up? How did that evolve and change to where they are now? And I feel like my job with you is easy because your whole story is a story of evolution and just growth and like understanding and learning the science behind all of this knowledge you've gathered, especially over the last 15 years when you've traveled the world. So I'm going to kick back. I'm going to turn it over to you and ask you, what do you want to be when you were just a little kid? And how did that lead you to where you are now?
Yes. So it's funny. It almost feels like every 3 to 5 years, I would dream something into being. And by the way, that's how it works. What I've learned now is like you dream things into being, and because we forget to be dreamers of our own life. But without this outlook back then, I kept on being a dreamer. And so I think at the early stages, I was very much like other kids. Like I wanted to be a pilot, which kind of stuck
Hmm.
with me until today because I love traveling, flying so much. And it would be a really cool thing to do is just get a pilot license. Um, Now, later on in my life, I got really into sports. And so then kind of,
Hmm.
the societal norm, right, is to go pro in whatever sport you choose to do. And so in that sense, I followed that and I fell in love with cycling, and I became professional cyclist in early stages. And, then that was shaved off and I naturally wanted to put this effort and energy into business. And
Before you do that, do you mind me asking? Because I listened to you on another podcast. I'm forgetting her name and her show, which is horrible of me. But why did you stop professional cycling? Because I think that's a real important story of point of yours.
yes, yes. Well, so when I was 17, I started my first company, trading between Alibaba and eBay, carbon bike frames. And so there was a point in my stage where I had to figure out finances because it wasn't supporting as much just yet. And my parents wanted me to go to school and have your life be paid for. And so I actually, so first of all, I actually paid my friend to finish high school for me online. So I don't even have a high school technically because I was so uninterested in the traditional form of education.
Mm.
Now, don't get this wrong. I instead was reading so many books, and I was 15 years old with Eckhart Tolle, Power of Now, and Neil Donald Welsh, like the Conversations with God, and all of these like high level mystical books that were opening my brain to this other potential. But I was about 19 or 20 when I collapsed in a Czech national race, and I my body just shut down. Instead of me recovering, I was on a calls with factory and one man show doing fulfillments and sales and all at one time. And I essentially woke up in a hospital with Epstein-Barr, with chronic fatigue, with autoimmune issues, and
Oh
massive
my
depression.
gosh.
Yes, I completely ran my body through the ground. And then I couldn't continue because I literally every 2 weeks I would be getting sick. I would like get back on the bike, and then I just couldn't
Oh
get my
my
immune
gosh.
system, back up. And at that time I had a suicidal thoughts. I had a like my complete chemistry was just gone, blown in my brain. And yeah, and so that was a big pivotal moment, basically, as to I had to leave all of the athlete mindset behind, and I put it into business. And I think, for me, like to do 7-hour bike rides and races with, I think it's like 20,000 miles a year that we have,
Wow.
put on the bike on the body. It was and not having that, right, and instead putting it into business was so easy, or felt easy, comparatively. And I think I just put all my endurance into then building companies and building businesses. But it got me into a second extreme. Then you go from one rat race to another rat race to to another.
That-
But that's
That's
life.
exactly what it is. Yeah, I was gonna say that's life. I always feel, I've recently, and this is cool, like the timing of all this, I think is so cool because my show now has become like a stream of thought for me. Like, what am I thinking about in the moment? Let me go find someone to talk to about it. And one of the things that I've been very interested in is I've personally been feeling very burnt out lately. I have a lot on my plate. I have a full-time job. I do this podcast. I now edit it as well. I've got some other stuff going on. I got a nonprofit that I'm on the board of. So much stuff, and I'm feeling burnt out. And one of the things that I've realized is it's because we're always hustling to chase what we've determined as a society as productivity. And what that does is it just gets you in this constant grind where you're always grinding for more, and this growth of your income, this growth of your career, this growth of pretty much everything, but this growth of like your internal self. And that's what I think is so interesting about the timing of us finally getting together to do this, because this is your whole mission. This is your whole point.
Yes, balance. I mean, literally. It's funny because so many of us are in this whole way, right? So I always like to use Silicon Valley was like the breakthrough, where in our society we became this chronic overdoers on every level.
Mm-hmm.
And productivity, right, went through the smash, like all of the productivity coaches and time management and like all of the, imagine the amount of training that you can find today on like how to become a bigger, better production machine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, does that bring us balance? Does that make us happy? It's a very questionable, and I think a lot of us are finding the same way, that doing more is not always better. But in that same process, so what's interesting, if we put our time into three buckets, there is a time with yourself, right? This is when you focus on your education, creativity, fitness, wellness, whatever, you spend time with yourself, which, by the way, very little people spend much time with themselves anymore, which is a first big important thing to bring back home. The second part is your family, friends, or husband, wife, right? Like the closest relationships that you nurture. And then the third table is your career. I like to call it life's purpose or mission, because hopefully you are making means with something that you're passionate, purposeful, and it's for the greatest good of the whole. If not yet, I mean, it's nothing against that, but it's another deep calling that all of us are realizing right now. And when you look at this triangle, right, of time, it's important that we spend and block off, if we do use time management, right, time for each one in a perfect balance. Now, what I've learned in this process is if we don't spend time just within our own selves, with our own thoughts, we're constantly just living somebody else's life. We're constantly just chasing ourselves. And even though we might be self-employed, right? And that was a big movement, right? Like just like become your own boss and this. But then we become a slave to our own creation as well, right? So then it goes back into the doing again. So what I find really crucial is that we become society of beers. And this is, by the way, our biggest core value is be, do, and have. Because if you look at a consciousness expansion in a workplace or in like our career space, the first step is where life is sucks. It's just not that great. This could be gangs. This could be, somebody that's homeless, somebody that their life generally sucks. Like there's not really, outlook out of that. The second stage is my life sucks. And this is kind of where people start noticing, this is the victimhood mindset, right? A lot of corporations and corporates are in that, like, what is happening to me and beyond. The third stage is I am great and you are not. And I'm saying it like really blindly, right? But what that means is I am becoming confident at who I am, right? And I am good at it. And I am, doing this for myself, right? It's still like a me centric environment. The fourth stage is we are great and you are not. So this is that a group of people are starting
That's a
to
cult.
align. Yep. Cool. But it could be a football team. It could be an
Right.
Olympics, right? Country against country, right? They're unified, but they're against someone still. And then the fifth stage is life is great, period. But here's the deal. If we don't go through this, right? If we don't get the confidence, like in the third stage, for example, right? How do we even think of anybody else, right? So like with the we, it starts becoming about the group, about the ecosystem. But in the fifth stage, there's no competition. We start realizing that without one another, there's no evolution, right? There's no reflection. So when I look at balance and burnouts, what has absolutely stopped this in my life is using something I call the process of unhooking. Now, once a day, I spend the first hour of the day outside of cell phone, computers, emails. I go inward as soon as I wake up because you're still prompt to be in the alpha state. So the first hour, unless you kill it with going on your phone and through the notifications, right, you go straight to beta, fight or flight a lot of times because you immediately stop breathing, you tense up. And then all of a sudden, the external world is running you instead of you running
Yes.
the external. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So every
That's why I
day,
have notifications off until 8 a.m. My
yeah,
alarm goes off at 6, 7 sometimes, depending on the day. I don't look at my phone and I just lay in bed and think because you're right. That's what happens is you pick up that phone and the world is running you. That is so brava.
yeah, but it's by design, right? Because we became society of doers, and it's all linked to the mental body, which we can talk about, like our whole mind that needs to be really fixed in that process. But so then once a week, I take a full day off completely out of the digital world, physical world. I also try to fast during those days. And this is that time that the first half of the day I just spend with myself, with my thoughts, with my journal. And then the second part of the day, I bring my kids and wife and family as well. But as you can see, so now I do it daily, weekly. That week, I go
Mm-hmm.
back one week and I project forward one week. So I know exactly what my choices are and I can determine my consequences. And then once a month, I spend 4 days completely off of everyone and everything. And if you've ever been to a vacation, the first three
Mm-hmm.
days are so hard. Like you don't know what to do with yourself. You want to scroll on the phone and like it's so hard to just like drop in. So
Yeah.
that's why usually the 4 days when all the magic comes in, when you finally like let it go. And if you've ever been to a vacation, the last 2 days you don't want to go back because you finally unhooked from everything,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah, it's exactly right.
And then once a year I spend 10 to 15 days completely off. And for me it's dark room, so I spend 10 days in darkness with no food, because it's complete deprivation of everything. But it doesn't have to be this extreme, right? You can book yourself a cabin somewhere in nature. You can, whatever fuels your soul or your heart, follow
What
that.
about like float tanks? Have you heard of those before?
Absolutely. I think they're
Yeah.
fantastic, especially that hour, like spending an hour
Yeah. I look at that because I actually have a gift card from like 5 years ago to do a float tank, and I'm like, I don't know if I can be in the darkness with my thoughts for a whole full hour.
So just a quick thing: don't do any caffeine before you go there. That's the key, because caffeine
Okay.
will crush you going into the theta. So if you hit the right, if you get the right hour, you basically will go into theta brain waves, which is the restorative brain, where you feel like you're daydreaming, right? So you're not fully asleep, but you're also not fully present, and that's your subconscious mind. And this is what, for example, yoga nidra, which is a sleeping yoga, if you just do
Hmm.
20 minutes of that, it replaces 2 hours of sleep. And that's because of you're hitting these type of brain waves. And floating is the same thing. It's a very powerful tool.
Very cool. I didn't mean to interrupt you with that, but you were saying you do your once a year you do your 10 to 15 days in the darkness and no eating.
Correct. Yeah. So 10 days is the darkness, and then the other 5 days is for integration and spending time and cleansing, clearing. But what I've noticed, so if I follow this cycle, I very rarely get any form of burnouts anymore. And I
Mm.
used to be the king of burnouts. I would be highs and lows, like NOA AON.
That's me.
Literally, that's
Yeah.
like I would like go 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 go, run myself to the ground, and then like for a week unfunctional, like can't even wake up. That used to be me.
That's exactly how I feel. And if I don't take that stop when I start recognizing it, it just goes worse. I become lethargic, brain fog, can't put a sentence together. It's brutal. That's so I want to take a minor step back because I wanted to ask you about this. You actually, how did you come up with the darkness? Was that based on your, because you had 15 days in darkness after one of your, was it, I forget, was it your business? I want to go back to that. Like, how did you get out of the hustle culture and running your business and burning yourself out to realize that, hey, there's bigger things going on here in this world. And, I need to focus on connecting with it.
Yeah, so here's the thing. Most people use spirituality as a convenience. When we hurt, we seek spirituality. And when I say spirituality, I'm not talking about just like meditation, yoga, or that. I'm talking about just spending time with yourself. Getting clear on who you are and where you're going. Like it's a way of life. A lot of mystics say, we're spiritual beings living human experience, and whatever happens on the human part, that's the last stop. So that means that you have been not listening for that long, right? When it hits the physical body. Now, what's interesting in my life, I've always had this in the back of my mind that that's life, right? Like always make sure that you're spiritually connected, okay, and you don't lose yourself in the process of things. And what I did is I committed myself in those last 15 years that every 3 months, I'm going to do something ridiculous, something out of my
Mm.
comfort zone. And no matter how busy I am, no matter what is happening, I'm just going to close myself somewhere in a retreat, workshops, course, whatever that might have been. Now, Darkroom was one of them, and I've learned about Darkroom from Drumvalo Melchizedek, which I did this 4-day opening illuminated heart workshop. And essentially, they were talking about these breatharians and people that are nourished by prana, by source, that don't require physical food, and that they do it through darkness. And so I was like really intrigued. I was like, what is this? It just felt like I gotta be there. And it took me
Hmm.
about 5 years to get there before I made it. And then there it is. It was a 360 change of my entire life after stepping in there.
Wow.
But this just shows you, like, even though I wasn't where I am today, I still always had this time to to develop and spend time on what I call the self mastery. Because all of us, right, we go through these shifts. We're either in self mastery or we are in service. And so self mastery is when we're learning, educating, growing, right, the inner part. But then service is we naturally want to give it out to others, which is
Right.
why we are humans.
That's true. And the servicing thing too, I think some people do that before they do the inside piece of it. And that's also something that causes, I'm guilty of that, by the way. So that's something that I think causes people extra stress and everything too. When you first went into that first dark room experience, what was going through your head the first time?
Well, definitely I had butterflies. And, what I've learned about butterflies, they're actually a great indicator of something that you got to follow. So, by the way, if you
Mm.
ever are not like unsure about something, there is fear, right? And then there's butterflies. And so butterflies, it kind of feels like fear, but it's just fear that of unknown, right? So I
Mm.
follow the butterflies because it means I can expand as a human. So I had
That's
a
true.
lot of
Good
butterflies.
point.
And I walked in there, completely just busy, right? Like calls and meetings, and I mean just think about it as like a wall in front of you, like that gives you a stop. And it took about 7 days to fully surrender. Like, yeah, 7 days.
Wow.
Monkey brain like would not shut up, right? My emotional body would just see lamb chops in dreams everywhere flying around. And what I've learned is, the emotional attachment to food that we have is way bigger than the physical attachment to survival. And it taught me so much about how freaking unleashed mind can ruin your life. Because think about it, if we spend all the time in our head and we don't have a direct reflection or pause, we're just constantly feeding that same loop. And 95% of all of our thoughts is just the same bullshit, same clutter that repeats and repeats and repeats. But when we take a pause like this, you finally can shine the light on all of the thoughts that you're actually thinking about yourself. And then you're starting to be like, like, why in the hell am I thinking so negatively about who I am, right? Why am I saying that this person is, X, Y, and Z? And so it really gives you a clear, like, look and outlet on who you are, not on who you're not.
Right, right. I can see that, but 7 days to that's oh my gosh. And I'm worried about an hour in a float tank. So do,
Well, that's the magic, though. That's when it comes.
yeah, that's true. That's true. I was listening to you on Aaron Alexander's podcast, the Align podcast, and you had you guys had done a breathing exercise. Now, he put that at the end of the episode. It was 15 minutes. I haven't gotten to that point yet. But what I wanted to ask you was a little bit about breath work, because I've heard you talk about it in several interviews. Um, where where did you learn to get in touch with your breath work? And what did you learn that you can share with people listening, and what the benefits they can expect from it?
Yes, breath is life. It's literally it's become the most important teacher of every moment because it's the one thing that you constantly have, and if you stop it for long enough, you die. So
That is
so
that simple.
so yes, breathwork 101. Continue breathing. No, so what's interesting, so the first time I got exposed to deep breathing, so first thing we should discern the difference. You've got a subtle breath, which is as we're breathing right now, right? There is a most of the time it's shallow, most of the time we're not relaxed in our body. And then you've got deep breathing, which could be variety of different styles, where you hyperventilate and where you actually are getting excessive amount of CO2 out or in, depending if you're holding or on exhale or inhale. Now, what's interesting, breath is literally the director of everything, of your state, of your awareness of each moment. And
And your
so
nervous system.
your nervous
Yeah.
system, and it's also at the same time the one thing that's controlled by the autonomic nervous system, where we can do it consciously or unconsciously, right? It's something that keeps us alive when we sleep, right? Now, majority of us in the world, we are chronic overbreathers. We are mouth breathers, which, by the way, if you can take away one thing from today, start with nasal breathing all the time. And I'm talking even exercise. Even when you're exercising and you're going deep into running, cycling, whatever that might be, holding the attention on extended breath. It's really, really a key through your nose. Nose is a filter, so it's kind of like a strength exercise, but nose is also uh, something that you can build control way better. Now, the gold standard breathing, whenever you're listening right now or talking, or let's say that you're on your phone or writing an email, stay aware of the 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out. Now, you don't have to count this, but at the beginning, if it helps you count it, it's great, because you will kind of know what does extended breathing feel like. So it's kind of like 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out, always through the nose, because we know based on science, this lowers down your stress, it increases your heart rate variability. It also can bring you into a state of heart-brain coherence. And even more so, what it can do is, imagine that somebody crosses in front of you in a car, right? And let's say it's something as simple and trivial as, somebody cuts you off, right? You have a choice to react, lose the sense of your breath, tense up in your body, and go into a rage. Or you can have a chance to proact, which you go into a state of neutrality. You continue being aware of the breath. You relax into your body instead of tensing up. And now you're starting to realize that every situation of your life becomes the greatest teaching and training for your extended awareness. So that's the gold standard for subtle breathing. If you ever have anxiety, or if you ever feel depressed, or you just have something where you want to reset, I like to use a 3-6-9 breath, where you inhale for 3, hold your breath for 6, and exhale out for 9. And what it does, within about 3 to 5 minutes, it will bring you into parasympathetic nervous system, as long as you stay relaxed and you follow this breathing rhythm. The other one, if you like really, really are going through something, let's say that your husband is yelling at you, or coworker, something happened, then you want to focus on long, deep, extended exhale, and this time out of your mouth. And it's basically like blowing air, like a cold air, extended, cold, blowing air, and see if you can extend it for as long as you can. Maybe it's 10 seconds first, maybe you build it all the way to 30 seconds. But this is what we do when we take people through ice bath, by the way. This is the first thing, is you relax your body and you focus on long, deep exhale, because what you're doing, you're literally telling your body you're safe, you're calm, you can relax. So these are kind of like the 3 subtle, easy breathing techniques you can practice anytime, right? You don't have to worry about any safety. Then there is the deep breathing exercises, which you...
Can I add one thing? I've been doing cold showers for about a year now, and I'll turn it cold at the end. And I've gotten myself up to like a minute and a half that I can stay in it. And it's the first 10, 15 seconds that is like, holy shit. And then I do a deep exhale through my mouth, and then I'm okay for the rest of it. I didn't know that about the breathing. So you saying that, and I was like, oh my God, that's when I calm down in the cold showers, when I... and just slowly let it out. But anyway, please continue.
That's incredible. But you know what's even more so? So imagine that that's a cold shower, right? Or let's say an ice bath. But that's as extreme as it gets, right? In like that current moment. But what if every single notification did the same? What if every single time you go on your email, right, you are seeing, let's say, something that happened somewhere, right? Every single situation in your life gives you the same opportunity to either react or proact. And so this is why the breath is such a great teacher and relaxation in your body, because, ice bath is like the graduation, right? If you can take it through an ice bath for 2 to 5 minutes, then you can really regulate your nervous system. And that's what we know based on science, that we can alter our autonomic nervous system based on will, based on our focus and breath. Now, if you want to go deeper and you are more explorative and you really want to take it to another level, then there is a variety of psychedelic type breathworks that can get you into these enlightened states. There's also physical breathwork, which is, I would say, Wim Hof is probably the safest, the most studied breathing technique, the retention breath that you can take, because we know that between 10 to 15 minutes, you actually alkalize your blood. And so through this deep, breathing and retaining on exhale and inhale, you go through these 2 extremes in a short period of time, where it brings you into a state of homeostasis, similar to, cold exposure, where your body and your cardiovascular system gets to be trained. Now, then there is holotropic breath, which is something that you continuously breathe deep. This is something that has been designed in 70s to basically mimic what LSD or psychedelics are doing to our brain
Mm.
with just a voluntary breathing, which I find fascinating. That again, we don't need anything, just us, just yourself. Um, and then you've got things like rhythmical breath, where, for example, you follow 2 seconds in very deeply, 2 seconds out very deeply. And when I say deeply, it's kind of like running uphill, right? It's a deep saturation. It is not an office breath. And that's what
Mm.
is the discernment between the subtle breath and deep breath. And then you have things like power breath or DMT breath, where you actually do these squeezes at the end. And that's when lights start turning on in our brain. And that's when things really start shifting. And so I generally do this once every morning. So in the morning I do a variety of these breathing styles. It's in my golden hour, right? In that hour where I'm focusing on myself, and I navigate the breath into different intentions and things that I will experience in the day, because where intention goes, your energy flows. It's that simple.
Mm. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. So you mentioned psychedelics. What role can psychedelics play in your view and your experience and your knowledge in someone healing, growing their awareness, connecting more? So because and even I actually want to ask you about connection too, but we'll stop there because I think that's something that I had recently a veteran on my podcast who started Psych Exchange, which is the goal is to help veterans get connected with psychedelic treatment to help their PTSD because it changed his life to be able to do that. So, you're hearing more and more. It's becoming more and more acceptable. People still give shit to like Aaron Rodgers because he went on a ayahuasca journey, but it seems to be coming. It seems psychedelics are becoming more acceptable, and we're recognizing the healing properties of it. I know here in Chicago and in Illinois, ketamine treatments you can get at clinics. So it's not only becoming legal; it's becoming an actual part of your mental healing. So I'm curious, what's your take and what's your knowledge about psychedelic treatment?
Yeah, so very extensive in a ways where I've experimented with many of them. So I've been through iboga, ibogaine. I've done peyote, San
I don't
Pedro.
even know what those are. What are those? I only
There,
know mushrooms, ketamine, and ayahuasca. So educate me.
yeah. So some are masculine, some are feminine, some are from Africa, others are from South America. I mean, I've had plenty of healing with kambo, which is the frog poison that you put
Mm,
on your
I've
body.
heard of that too.
And that's actually been a huge healing. It's non-psychedelic, so that one is they call it the jungle vaccine. I've done sananga, which is a eye drop that helps you clear your vision. I've actually healed my eyesight, my long distance eyesight, with doing that and diet.
Really?
Yes, fully. Since I was 10 years old, I wore 2.63 was the number, which is pretty high for a 10-year-old, and I completely reversed my sight back.
So you don't have any contacts or anything now?
Nothing. I literally
Wow.
stopped wearing it.
That will never happen here because the contact industry, like, there's no way. I mean, I spend like $600 a year on my contacts. It's crazy. Anyway,
Yep.
that I didn't know about that. That's cool.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. So I mean, think about it, right? Everything that's FDA is coming from some form of plant or nature originally, right? And then it gets chemically altered, and I think this is what is really important distinction. So step one, after doing all of these psychedelics, it all came back to breath. So if you've never done, if you're wondering whether I should do this or not, first go into a deep breathing class, because it's absolutely going to take you similar, if not deeper places, because you can take it with you home. Now, I want to make a direct distinction. So, if somebody has a really deep PTSD, a very form of abuse, or something very dramatic, right, that happened in their life, there is a point that sometimes you do need something more dramatic, right, to work
Hmm.
with. And so, this is why I still start with breath, but then there's variety of support that can help you with getting over that. Now, I have a big concern with the amount of overuse of psychedelics in our world right now,
Mm.
because what's happening is people are starting to justify it as a medicine while it's just another way to escape. And escapism is, can come from social media. It can come from alcohol. It can come from, any sorts of addictions. And so I just want to warn anyone that if you are seeking to just have alternate states, the life is here on earth. And so the life always begins here on earth and ends on earth, because we are privileged to have this experience here. Now, if it means that you have to have a deep dive and to really understand, all this is doing, it's bringing you into a third party view, right? So when I go to a dark room, that's all it is. The reason why I have all these insights is because it opens up a space for a different brain waves and for different state to be able to see things that I didn't pay attention to. And that's really what happens in any sorts of psychedelics, right? It allows you to finally see, take your monkey brain off and look beyond the veil, so to speak. Now, breath can do that. A beautiful, a marathon can do that sometime. That's why a lot of people get also addicted to sports, right? And long-term things like this, because we're seeking peace. We're ultimately seeking love. We're ultimately seeking that this monkey brain can shut down for a moment so we can be. So very cautious with doing it in groups, very cautious doing it with a proper people. I won't do psychedelics anymore in a group settings. I will only do it
Oh,
101,
interesting.
because you can open yourself up to a way more than you came with. So very, very crucial.
That's interesting because one of the things that I've heard in contradiction to, I've heard both sides, right? And I had never heard that argument before. So like I have friends that'll do like a psychedelic, like mushrooms, for example, and they'll do it all by themselves. And it was a great experience. And so, and then I have some that'll do it by themselves. It's a bad experience and they never want to do it again. And I've got the other side too, where it's like, it was a group, it was great, and I can't imagine doing it any other way. And then it's a group. I had a bad trip. I was the only one that had a bad trip, and it just to me, it's terrifying. It sounds really terrifying. So
But
that's
so
a good point, that it opens you up to everything else that's there instead of just what you're trying to connect with in yourself.
yes, and also defining bad trip, what it is. So the first hour of any high dose psychedelics, it brings those things out of your subconscious mind to the forefront. And so this is again why, if you don't have a breathing practice, if you don't have a tools how to surrender, how to let it go, you're going to be in that bad trip. So the only reason why you ever have a bad trip is because you're holding on to something. You're not letting go. So
Mm.
that's going to happen again and again and again, no matter where you go, no matter how it will hunt you, because this is unresolved trauma or processes or thoughts or past relationships. It can be all kinds of things that we might not even realize, but we're holding it in our background. And if I give you an analogy of an app, think of your iPhone, and think of it is filled up with different apps, right? You could have the apps that you use every day, right, that are really great for you. That could be the app of your morning routine. That could be your app with spending time with your wife or husband, and so forth. But then you can also have an app that is self sabotage, that is continue drinking
Mm.
alcohol, that is smoke a weed.
Instagram, TikTok,
Instagram.
social
Yep.
media.
And imagine all of these apps are running at the same time, right? Now, if you want to download a new app or new software on your phone, you connect to the internet, and that's how you download it, right? Or delete it. Now, the same way it goes for our emotions, our mental patterns, our situations that we keep on repeating in our life. But in order for us to delete them, we have to connect to the inner net. So, inner net is when you slow it down, you breathe, you meditate, you do psychedelics, right? No matter how you enhance this, that's all we're seeking. We're going inward into this internet to solve, download, upload, new software.
That's very, very, very well put. And when you when you say software, like same with the phone, right? You keep downloading apps, you download apps, you download apps. All of a sudden, you're out of memory on your phone, right? So deleting apps or deleting things, like I said earlier, shedding things that aren't meant for you, sounds like that's also a very important part of the process.
Yes, and by the way, so this is the process that we've created. We call it, it's the journey through self transformation, and essentially we take people on this process in their most prominent situations, thoughts, relationships that we deal with, and we basically created this roadmap through the power of breath, through the power of meditation, sound healing, guidance, and dance in our events. So basically, if you come to one of our system reset experiences, literally system means computer, like your biosystem, and reset means when you hold the button for 2 or more seconds, it resets back to baseline. And so that's what we're doing with people in events.
So what walk us through what is this event like? What is the experience? How long does it go? What are some of the activities you participate in and all of that? Love to hear it. Love to
Yeah.
join it, I think.
Yes, yes. So it's after. So think about, after all these 15 years, I just put all of the tools that had science and that were simple, easy, duplicatable for everyday person, right? In today's world, I put that into this experience. So think about it as going into a concert, right? Like, let's say you go see your favorite artist, but it's sober. You have a group of people that are aligned like you. It's a full-on show. So I mean, we have a drummers, instrumentalists, sound healers. There is a cacao ceremony. There is we give people roses when they arrive. There is a senses, smells. We use blindfolds while you're dancing as well, so you can really go deeply inward. And so we've curated this whole experience that's based on your own journey through self transformation, and allows these breakthroughs to happen without any psychedelics, without anything, just your own, power and will. And we do variety of breathing styles. We do variety of different reframing, emotional healing. Uh, it's just like a fully loaded, program. We
Yeah.
also bring biohacking tools into the mix, where we have like light therapy, we've got vibroacoustics, red light. We really combine the tech, right? The latest tech that can help enhance that. And then take people home, take people back to remember how beautiful, powerful they already are.
Yeah. And you have, since you mentioned it, one of the things I wanted to ask you is you have conscious products, you said, and I think red light therapy was one of them. And what are some of those products? What makes them conscious, and what are some of the benefits of maybe your favorite one or two?
Yeah, so the reason why we have them is, as I travel the world, I've always been seeking tools, right? And so just like there's tools that are like breathwork, there's also tools nowadays in a tech space, in a biohacking space, that can enhance your capabilities. And so just like this world is faster and faster, the demands are higher and higher. We also have to offset that with a proper, ways to rest. So one of these is called Visor, which is a light therapy, light stimulation, and let me see, and that's literally this incredible, light sequence that puts you through variety of different brain waves in a short period of time, and it puts your brain into this, fire state for a little bit, to essentially bring new neuroplastic changes, over the course of a time.
Mm-hmm.
So especially when you're looking to change, different habits and neurons, it basically goes into the frontal part of your brain, and then through breath work, sound, and meditation, which we teach in the whole session, we're able to instantly put you into a present moment. And so many people don't even know what that feels like, by the way. People think that
Oh no.
meditating for an hour, is like a win. But if you're constantly in a thinking mind, then it's brutal, right? That's the monkey brain.
Right.
So this
Right.
helps you take the monkey brain off and bring you into presence. And we also call this, it's the drug-free microdose, because the light stimulation does the same thing to your brain as if you were microdosing mushrooms. Um, so that's my favorite. I also use this. This is a Sarah Thrive. It's a brain gut red light. And so instead of the
Ah.
traditional panels, this actually touches your body, so you can absorb it, and it has a frequencies that you can set, And then we also have a meditation that we teach with it, so that way it activates the person, right there and then. Um, we also work with EMF protection, because I've found it's really crucial in the amount of man-made EMF that we're surrounding ourselves with, to
What
also
is
offset that.
EMF for those that don't know?
It stands for electromagnetic frequencies, and there is man-made, and then there is natural. The natural is sun, traditional
Hmm.
radiation we've been exposed to forever, and we can, just fine comprehend life with it. But then there is Wi-Fi, routers, satellites, Bluetooth, your smart appliances, electric cars. Every single one of these items emit nowadays dangerous amount of EMF. There's over 6,000 studies proving that it's harmful, but it's invisible. So most people don't even think that.
And a lot
And
of times, if you bring it up, you get called a quack.
yeah, it's crazy. And so this is actually one of those things that if I didn't have a personal experience, I would think the same. But when the 5G was rolled out,
Yes.
I started having depression. I couldn't sleep, and I started feeling agitated like constantly. And I was already, healthy, right? Living a lifestyle I
Hmm.
live today. And I was like, what is it now? After all of this
Like, I've done all
thing,
this work.
like what do you want from me? And that's when I looked outside of my window intuitively, and it was about 200 yards away was a tower with 5G. And so then I was like, we get a meter. We went online. We read the book with my wife, EMF, from Dr.
Hmm.
Mercola. By the way, it's a great book if
Oh, I know
anybody.
Dr. Mercola.
Yeah, so he
Yeah.
wrote a book called EMF. And
I'm going to pull that up.
yeah, it's a great place to start. I've even created with my wife a webinar for people, which we can share if anybody's interested in learning more. Because, for example, kids, there's no safety limit for kids' brain when it comes to EMF. And so, if kids are using Bluetooth, if kids are using just like laptops on their bodies, we're literally killing their DNA. Like we're destroying their comprehension. We are also messing up their sleep, which is so important for development for anybody really.
So there's 5G towers on the school down the street from me,
That's the
where kids are
epiphany.
spending 6, 7 hours a day, right?
There's
Jesus.
so much you can find on YouTube with this. Like look up some of the people measuring the numbers when you're around 5G and then when you're away from 5G. And distance is your best friend, by the way. So for example, just to not freak everybody out, like the key to this is further away it is better. If you're using headphones, use it with cord, or we also have a tubular headphones that completely help you eliminate that so it doesn't radiate your brain.
Oh my
Don't
God. I
use.
have my Bluetooth headphones. My brain is probably, it's too late. It's probably
Well,
fried. Like these are
never too
Bluetooth right
late.
now, too.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so it's never too late. It's kind of like toxins, EMFs, right? More you're exposed to, harder for your body it is to alleviate that. And this is why, like again, like I'm not saying we have to live without without technology, right? Like it's not going anywhere. It's just going to be more and more. But what's key is, turn off your Wi-Fi when you sleep, for example, so you can eliminate that. Um, Turn off always your cell phone. Put it on airplane at least when you're sleeping. That's a key. Um, Check your if you have any fluorescent lights at home with a dimmer switch that imitates also dirty electricity, which a lot of our homes have dirty electricity issues.
Mm.
Make sure that if you are using your cell phone, never have it by your ear. Like have it on a speaker and about 6 inches away from you.
And
Um,
it's also dangerous for men to keep it in their pocket, which we all do, right?
that is
I've,
only time you want to do that is if it is on airplane. um, or women, they put it on their breast. There's a
mm-hmm.
increase little there's a direct link to breast cancers from women doing that. My father-in-law had a tumor in his brain, and literally from his cell phone, holding it right by. So the thing with EMFs is that people don't link that to it, because it's just like cigarettes. Cigarettes can take 10 years or 15 years to develop cancer. It's very much the same with EMFs. And, going back to nature, earthing is number one way to discharge this out of your system. So for example, spending even 10 minutes a day on a grass, where you put your feet on a grass, is a huge benefit. um, and then of course, there's a technology that we use at our house and when we travel. It's called a key technology from Waveguard. And it's one of our products, because when we discovered this, I went on the shopping spree and bought everything, literally everybody that said that they have something against EMF. And I essentially found only products that do something called harmonizing the space around you, which can be beneficial, but most of the times it lasts 6 months to even feel something. And then it doesn't really do anything directly to the EMFs. And so we found this technology that can actually depolarize the harmful EMFs in your space. And it creates this torus effect, this torus field, where
Mm-hmm.
through this key liquid, which is it's designed by the inventor, who was the inventor of the year in European Union last year, actually, for this invention. And essentially what it does, think about it as it takes the harmful EMF and renaturalizes it, so that way you can have a safer environment around you. And so that's what we travel with, that's what we have at our house constantly, because then you don't have to worry about this. But it does not cover dirty electricity, and it does not cover, like, if you have your phone like right with you on you, you still want to have that practice hygiene,
Right.
technological hygiene.
We're fucked. This is just, I'm kind of like, I'm trying not to become a nihilist, but it just feels, and you started it off with this, but it just feels like with the World War III, that seems like it's never ever, or seems like it's inevitable at this point. And then we're destroying our brains and our minds and our bodies with all this technology, and we're just doing more and more and more and more. And it just kind of makes me feel like, what are we doing? Like, there's this book I read along. No, it's not the one I read. There's this book I read called Civilized to Death. And it was just very much, I mean, it was 5 years ago I read it, very much just like a prophecy of where we were going, it feels like, especially with like the Neuralink and all of that stuff that people are getting done in human trials now. So it's just weird. But here's this is a good way to segue to the other thing I wanted to talk to you about: feeling connected or feeling disconnected from one another. And what I think happened with COVID, which there's studies to back this up, but like just to normal language it, I think what happened with COVID is we had a bunch of lonely people in the world, right? And then we took away work, we took away socializing, we isolated people, and we made everyone build connection through computer, right? Through technology, which is great. You and I would not be doing this right now without technology. I've met so many people through technology and social media, but it does create, and I feel it too, I feel way more isolated and way more lonely than I ever have before, even though I talk to people through a computer or on the phone all day, every day. So where do we go from here? Because we have a loneliness epidemic. We have a lot more anxiety and mental health challenges than we've ever had before. And I think we're feeling more and more disconnected from each other every single day, even though digitally and through social media, we're more connected than we've ever been.
Yeah, it's where we put the focus on is what is going to grow, right? And so when if you are still one of the people that are uh, checking daily news, and you are looking at TVs, and you are in a radios, and this is really not the truth about our life. And I can tell you this from personal experience. And I want to create a documentary about this, because it, I think, will give people hope that this world is actually way more positive and beautiful than we sometimes think. And what I've learned through 150 events a year in over 100 different cities around the world is that there is a huge movement of people that are saying no to this type of life, that are saying no to limitation, that are saying no to fear. And what is happening, media focuses on the 5% of the world that is negative. But if you look around you, 95% of the world is very positive. There's groups of people all around the world that are doing magical work. There's people that are waking up to their potential, that are taking time for themselves, that are changing their jobs from the old paradigms. And so what we have to do as each person individually and then connect this collectively is we need to start focusing on the 95% of the things that are positive, because more we see that, it's like if you see a, I don't know, a red Kia, right? And you're like, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
I saw a red Kia, right? You're going to keep on seeing red Kia everywhere.
Yes.
That's called holographic universe 101. So if we create our own reality with what we're thinking, what we're saying, what we're doing, and that's what we're experiencing. And I'll give you a simple example. We can live in the reality of war, right? Suffering, pain, anxiety, which is generally media, right? Like it's media induced is what you see. Or you can live in the world of peace where you create your own groups of people, that you do a meetup, right? That you talk about the positive things in the world. And in these type of groups of people, even though we're living on the same earth as war is happening, the war cannot even exist. And it's not that I'm saying I'm denying war, just to not confuse
Mm.
this. It is
Yeah, I
still
don't want to get
happening.
you canceled.
And it is not anything that anyhow we should accept. But if enough people in the world, in their hearts, war does not exist, even just a thought or idea, then war will not exist. And we're seeing this with all of the people in the military. They're waking up too. These are all young kids, essentially in their 20s, that are like, why in the fuck am I continue fighting my
Yes.
brother or sister, right? Ukraine and Russia, like they're literally like neighbors, speak the same language. And this is what we need to focus on, is commonality, dream, vision,
Yes.
state. Like, where can we come together as a civilization and realize the greatness of each and every one of us? Because that will naturally these wars will dissipate. If enough people stop watching TV, they're gonna go broke, right? The TV is not
Yeah.
gonna be able to sell anymore
Well, and that's
ads.
happening. That's happening right now. Like no one's watching CNN. I mean, people still watch Fox, but that's like the average age is like 60 to 60 years old or something. So I agree with that. And also, I just want to say the way you said find the commonalities and bring people together. That's literally why I started this podcast, because I do see the divides. I live the divides, but I always believe that we're human beings first. And if we remember and act as if we're all human beings first, you're going to find way more things that you share in common than you're going to see that divide you. And those things that divide you, by the way, a lot of the times aren't even really a divide. And not to say people don't share differences of opinion, but it's usually differences of opinion about how to do something, not what we want. We all want the same things. We all want to live our lives, be happy, take a vacation, not have to worry about food, shelter, clothing, have time to ourselves, have time with our loved ones, balance work and life. Like we all want the same things. It's just the way that the media and the news and people use these dirty tactics to divide us and make it about something else. And so one of the reasons I started the show is because I want to get rid of all these stigmas about our brothers and sisters that we cohabit this planet with, and really feel like we're connected to people that we may have not even thought we had anything in common with, because we are. And we're all here, and we're all here at the same time. And if you think about the grand scheme of the existence of the earth and the solar system and every life form on this planet and every life form out there everywhere else, what an amazing thing to be sitting here coexisting at the same time in this tiny little rock floating around in the infinite space. Like, how magical is that? That we want to sit here and fight with each other. It's so silly to me when you think about it that way.
Yeah. And what you're doing, it's so important, because education, right, equals inspiration, which gives people motivation, which provides results. And so this is why it's so important that angels like yourself in this world continue doing this, because it allows people to unite to do this. And so thank you on behalf of all of your listeners for what you're doing for the world.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And what's funny is um, I think I have 2 other episodes recorded for the podcast, and it's funny you say that because I was kind of like, I think I'm taking a break after that because it's hard, right? I have some I have great guests. I've never had a bad guest, but some of them are pretty heavy conversations. It takes a lot of time. I don't do it. I don't make money off of it, a little bit, but not anything there. So I really do it because I care, but it gets tiring. And then you and I have been trying to coordinate for a little while, mostly my bad on that. But having you say that and reminding me of how important it is couldn't have come at a better time. So this is another example of, hey, the universe is sending you messages, pay attention to them, right? So I appreciate you saying that.
Well, we all reflect, right? Either the best of one another or the worst in one another. And I think what the media wants is to put people against each other because it keeps us in fear. And fear is measurable. Literally, your field around you is limited. It's literally shrinked if you look at fear. Versus when you're in love, it's expanded. And you can measure
Mm.
this even in the water. There's this doctor Emoto from Japan that was like the OG guy behind studying water. And what he found is that water, when you send love and well wishes, it creates these beautiful crystals. But when you send hate and hatreds and pain, it literally is distorted. But we are
Mm.
60 or 70% filled with water. So imagine the way we think projects into the physical body, the software into the hardware. And so if we are in a state of fear, panic, we are distorted, which is why you see degenerative spiral, right? This is why we age,
Mm.
why we feel tired, sick, we get disease, because we're in this state of distortion. And what does the system want? Where does the system make money? Right? It's FDA. It's financial system. It's more depleted you are in fear and in control, more power you're giving out to the external, which is all coming from the internal because we allow them to do that, right? And so if we reverse that and we bring love from within, right? We love ourselves, we love one another, we expand the fields, then the insights of a new earth can start coming in. And I think that's what so many of us are striving for, and that's what even Bible talks about, new earth or new,
Mm-hmm.
this is in every scripture. And I truly believe what that is we're going through this shift of letting go of the limitations and fear, suffering, and pain, and moving into love, joy. Because I see it in my own personal life. The same journey through self transformation took me from fear, pain, suffering into love,
Mm.
joy, and happiness. And so we came here to be happy, not unhappy. But
Yeah.
that unhappiness can be used as a way to learn to become happy again, so we can rise as one.
I love it. I love it. And I love the work you're doing. And I'm so grateful for that. Before we wrap here, though, I want to give you a chance to ask me anything. And I'll do my best to answer it as inspiring and positively as you do.
If it was your last breath today, or if you teleported yourself to the last breath of your life that you take, what would be the top 3 things that you've created or experienced or left behind?
I wasn't prepared. I should have been prepared for a question like this. Okay. Um, so if I were to, so you always hear these stories about people who are on their deathbed and they look back and they're like, why did I do this? Why did I do that? I, I have one thing that I'm trying to be better at now, but when I look back at a regret, I'll start there. What I feel like I left behind was a lot of my, and I'm not old, I'm 38, but, and I feel fine. So it's not, it's not like that. Like mentally, I'm okay. Physically, I'm good. But I look back and I spent so much of my time in my, you know, let me even step back. Since I was a young kid, like I've spent so much time working. And I was talking to my friend, Isabel, Dr. Isabel. She's also on the board of my foundation. And I was just chatting with her about how, like, oh, yeah, you know, I used to work part time and go to school. Then I worked full time in college. And she's just like, oh my God, you've been working so hard your entire life. And I look back on it. And by the way, I'm doing it now. It's like my trauma response is that I work too hard and I take on too much and I always think I can do something more. And when she said that to me, and I had like this was 2 weeks ago, I reflected on it. I'm like, I have been working my whole fucking life, and not just one job, but I've been like working to put myself through school at the same time. Then I've been working to start my career and working so many hours so that I could get ahead and I could learn, and taking on mentorships and doing extracurricular stuff also that I could get myself where I had my career goals. And like the last year and a half, 2 years, 3 years, I look back and I'm like, what for? Like, what for? Because I hit my career goal and it wasn't all it was cracked up to be. So if my last breath was today, I think I'm at this place where I'm like, I worked way too hard for all of the wrong reasons. And I think people should work hard. Like, I'm a hard worker, obviously, but I think I would look back and be like, you worked too hard. You gave up too much of your youth. You gave up too much to your job and at the expense of relationships, with partners, with friends, with family, and you did it all in the name of getting this sort of thing that ended up being rather empty and meaningless. So I think that's kind of like the negative thing. But if I were to look back on the positive things that I've left behind, um, and it's hard for me to say this because I don't think of myself as different. I don't think of myself. I'm a reluctant leader. Like, I lead things that I have to lead because nobody else will lead them and they need to get done. So when I look back on that, I started the UCAN Foundation and I was on a reality TV show. And it was a horrible experience overall for me. And I didn't have it as bad as so many other people. And, people have been telling me now for a year, because it's been a year since I started this foundation with my friend Jeremy, and people have been saying, you started this and we didn't know where to go, but now we can come to you and your organization. And so I look at that, and it's so early on, but I'm like, wow, the number of people that have said they would have had nowhere to go if we didn't have this organization makes me feel accomplished, because one of the reasons I started it was because I felt like me and my now ex-wife had nowhere to go. And I don't want anyone to ever feel that way again. And so, that is something it's hard for me to like credit myself and credit the work that I've done and we've done there. But that's something I look back on, and I know we're changing that industry, and I know that I have conviction about it. And when I have conviction about something, you better get the fuck out of my way, because I will not be stopped. And then the last thing I think is, I'm going to look back, and while I have, worked very, very hard, and I continue to put myself through, working almost to the point of it just being an avoidant tactic, right? But I look back on some of the relationships that I've had in my life, and that's, girlfriends and friends and family. And I really am proud of the way that I've grown as a human, and as I've grown as a friend, or the way I show up for other people in their life. And I think where there's that piece of me that maybe didn't have the meaningful relationships when I was younger, I have them now. And I think that I'm going to be able to look back and be like, wow, I really did have some very meaningful relationships in my life. And I think that's something that's, it's kind of like some of the stuff we talked about today. It's so hard to be connected today, but I look back and I just really do feel like I've done a really good job of learning how to connect with people and build strong relationships. So I would say, like, one negative, two positive things. I think that's probably what I would put at right there. And there's some tactical things that I've done that I'm proud of, but like at the end of the day, those are, a checklist. But it's really, to me, I want to look back on that last breath and be like, I did everything I could to leave this world better than I found it. And if I can look back and say, maybe I worked too hard, but I had meaningful relationships and I helped people, that service piece again, right? Then I think I'll be able to look back and be like, I left my mark on this world. And that's kind of a word vomit a little bit, journaling maybe, working through it in real time. But that's kind of what I think would be what I'd want to look back on and what I could look back on and say if I knew I was having my last breath.
Yeah, I love the fact that when we give ourselves a lot of shit in life, but we don't give ourselves enough credit. And I think that's really beautiful, because that's where the growth can accelerate where you might have been. And so I think it's amazing because, building up on the credit instead of building up on the hardship, right?
Well, I did that. You forced me to do that right here, right now. So because I have been very much focused on I'm working so much. I'm tired. I don't know if I want to do the podcast. I need to take a break, all of this stuff. So this was good. This was really, you've literally shown up here and entered my life at the perfect time for me anyway. So I'm grateful for you for that.
Thank you. And I also think maybe takeaway for everyone else, see if you can write down your dreams. It's something that I always do with all of my people, because we don't dream enough, and dreams state when you create images of your future self. We do this meditation. We look at the last breath you take, kind of like the whole summary of life. And you literally look backwards as if you've already accomplished that. And then you look at 10 years from now, 3 or 1 year from now, month, and all the way into a day. And then reverse engineer what and how can you spend even just 1 to 4% of every single day of your life on realizing your dreams. So that way your dreams are not somewhere when you get rich, or somewhere when you have the right partner, or sometime when you retire, but they are actually a microscopic influxes of every single day of your life that you're moving towards your dream.
I can't think of a better way to end it. That was beautiful. And I'm going to do that myself, because I think I could use some of that right now too. But thank you again. This has really, really been enlightening. This has been very educational and very inspiring. And you've changed my mindset on the day. So I'm grateful for that. But can you share with people where they can find you online and how they can get connected with you?
Yes, so it's NOA AON, NOAAON.com on our website. That's where we have our courses, on-demand library, which we can offer a free access, maybe in the show notes, so you can experience it from your home. So all that we've talked about, don't just talk about it, just go do it at your house with your headphones. And you can
wired
also find
headphones.
Yes. That's a good start, or good speakers. And then there's also events. So, we tour the world constantly. And then there's all of our conscious expansion products as well. And same thing on social media. We post different valuable posts that you can, take from home almost daily.
Yes. And all of those links will be in the show notes. So thanks again for coming on. This was really amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of Eyes Wide Open. If you enjoy the show, the best way to support us is by sharing or dropping a review. For more information and content, check out engagewithnick.com or find me on Instagram at nthompson513. Don't go through life blind. Do the work so you can show up in the world with your eyes wide open.